G'day, ladies and gentlemen. My name's TJ Hollis, and welcome to the AustrAlien Podcast. As always, here with me is the voice of the people, Mr. Shawn Mills. Shawn, what's the poop, my friend?
What a day in politics. The Cabinet Files. The Cabinet Files, as the ABC calls it. Brilliant.
Well, it's a good name for it.
Well, I think so. Hundreds of top secret and highly classified cabinet documents obtained by the ABC following an extraordinary breach of national security. Just reading that off their website.
And that's a very good description. And, it's very clever because they were actually in locked cabinets too.
Mm.
So for the people who are unaware, basically what's happened is the ABC has gotten a hold of a bunch of files that are mostly all classified, some marked as top secret, some marked as osteo, which means they are to be seen by Australian eyes only. Basically what happened is a bunch of old furniture was being sold off through a second-hand shop and went for a very, very, very cheap price. There were a couple of filing cabinets that had locks on them with no keys to the lock, so they went off even cheaper. And then somebody took a drill to the locks to find a whole bunch of top secret classified Australian cabinet documents.
Yep, that pretty much sums up the situation. I don't even know where to start with this, Tej. I don't even know where to start. It is both so completely and utterly horrifying that national security secrets, and there are national security secrets in this stuff, because pretty much anything marked Aussie is Australian stuff. We're talking about international things that we don't want the other guys to know.
Like troop deployments and other things to do with international politics and our military.
So you've got that side of it, which is literally horrifying that this stuff is out there. And on the other side, you've got, it's so comical.
This is mind-bogglingly incompetent.
Oh, yeah.
That is the only way you can really describe this. It is, like, I'm going to stumble over my words a few times in this episode because I'm still in disbelief that this was allowed to happen.
Well, this is actually only like 4 hours old, this story, as we record this episode. So pretty much all our information is coming from what the ABC have released so far. It's just, wow.
I know. Like, you sent me the link to this evening, and I just sat there in shock. Like, just taking it all in, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. Like, this is... It's inconceivable the amount of stupid decisions that had to take place for this to get to this point.
Yep.
Like, somebody had to make the decision to sell off that stuff, which, okay, that's fine. Putting all this cheap furniture out and making it available to people who have low incomes, that's a great move in itself. To not be making sure that all documents and sensitive information is not part of it is a stupid move. I mean, when the government sells off its computers, it makes sure to professionally wipe those hard drives.
Absolutely.
Why the hell are they not doing that with filing cabinets?
Yeah.
When you see that there are locks on filing cabinets...
They must have been so heavy.
Yes.
You know what a filing cabinet's like when it's full of papers? And these are just, it's paper. You got a tree in the filing cabinet.
Exactly.
And you're like, hey, that's alright, we'll sell this one for $5. Because we don't have the keys for it. What?
I mean...
Really?
The fact that it's locked should tell you, we should find out what's in here. There's probably something important. And if that means you bust in and you then can't sell the filing cabinet because it's busted, oh well, that's probably worth it to ensure that state secrets aren't being leaked.
And literally state secrets. I feel like we're in a 1950s spy thriller or something.
I feel like we're in a Leslie Nielsen film.
Yes, that's it. I was thinking of the Carry On films, that sort of silly sort of stuff, silly sort of thing. I'm just having a look on this. Actually, what I'll say is that they have, according to experts, this is a follow-up by news.com, according to experts, these filing cabinets could only have come from one of two places. Department of Finance or the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. And who would have had responsibility for them would have either been a minister or a very top-level bureaucrat. These are not filing cabinets that were, the secretary of, the cafeteria in Parliament House.
These weren't just in some bureaucrat's room. These were top-level things that were in somebody important's office.
Yeah. I got a question for you. You've gone through this, and I encourage our listeners, get onto abc.net.au, have a look at what the ABC have put together for this, because it's actually really good journalism. And,
it is so well written.
It's well written. It's well done. It's just well laid out, and there's nothing there that you can like. You can't accuse the ABC of being partisan on this one, as certain elements of the right wing tend to do. This is just horrific, because these files cover a 10-year period. So we're talking the end of the Howard government, Rudd, Gillard, Abbott. So I don't know if there's anything from the Turnbull government, but at least it goes up to Abbott at the very least. What do you think, TJ? What do you think is the one person so far, and I'm sure the ABC haven't released everything yet, who is the one person who comes out worst in these leaks?
Ooh. Part of me wants to say Penny Wong, but I really do think that Kevin Rudd comes out the worst.
Yeah.
Because now, if we would basically to quickly look at it, to explain to our listeners who haven't had the chance to read it, and this is a gross oversimplification, there's a bunch of evidence in these files that Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard and a couple of senior Labor ministers were warned about critical risks of the home insulation scheme that, Kevin Rudd went to the High Court over before the deaths of the 4 young installers. Correct.
Yeah.
And basically the way it's presented and what it looks like here's a direct quote from one of the files. Many of these risks cannot be adequately managed in the lead up to the July 1 start date. The timeline is incredibly tight, end quote. Where the real blowback on this, though, is because Kevin Rudd went to the High Court over it. Yep. He got raked through the fires, raked over the coals about this.
Yeah, the Royal Commission, yeah.
He claimed every time that he was unaware of anything, of any issues. And, in fact, the quote, as told by a member of Mr. Rudd's team to the ABC previously was, and I quote, "Any assertion Mr. Rudd was warned about safety risks to installers or failed to act on such warnings is completely baseless and untrue as determined by the Commission." End quote.
I'm very interested to see what the ABC have said. They've contacted Gillard, Swan and Tanner, who were the 4, along with Rudd, were the 4 people who had access to this. So I'm very interested to see what they say about it.
What I'm really interested to see is how the High Court reacts to this. Like, does it open another Royal Commission on this? At worst, this points to the fact that Mr. Rudd may have lied to the High Court in a Royal Commission.
Worst case scenario,
best, yeah, that's worst case scenario. And I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, because we don't know, and we're not going to know until we get more details. But at best, this makes Kevin Rudd look incredibly incompetent.
Yeah. I got a question. Now, I've read Julia Gillard's autobiography. Something she does say in there is one of the things was Kevin Rudd was so chaotic, was never across the brief, didn't really that was his nature. Micromanager in one respect, but in another respect, never across the brief, never, up to date with what he needed to be up to date with as Prime Minister, and that all fell on Gillard's shoulders. Knowing that she says that about that, you would think that her, as Deputy Prime Minister at the time, at least, would have read these reports.
Absolutely.
And I'm just like, someone like Lindsay Tanner and Wayne Swan as well, they're not nobodies. They're quite intelligent men and, know their stuff. They were the Gang of Four, they call it, Strategic Priorities and Budget Committee, which is basically, the four of them got together to overcome the financial crisis, in quotes. That'll be interesting. That'll be interesting to see how that one starts to play out.
In saying that, there's only a certain amount of slack you can pick up. You can't, if the person who is above you isn't doing their job correctly, you can't pick up all of their slack while doing your job as well.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And responsibility doesn't lie with Gillard. Responsibility lies with the person at the top, which was Kevin Rudd.
Absolutely.
So I'd be very, very interested to see how that plays out. No assertions on Rudd, Gillard or anyone else at the moment, but I'd be very interested to see how that one plays out. So, yeah.
Yes, that's going to be something I think we'll be touching on as the case continues in future episodes.
I just know that the ABC are going to trickle this out. This isn't going to be all of it now.
Oh, absolutely not.
Journalism 101. Get them hooked with something exciting and then in a couple of days drop the next bundle. That's what, even WikiLeaks and...
WikiLeaks was absolutely amazing at doing that. There's a reason why they released things the way they did.
Yeah. If you just do a data dump of everything at once, people are going to be like, ugh. So you said Rudd, and I tend to agree with that. I think another one who comes out not good is Penny Wong.
Absolutely.
And just to give a bit of a background to that one, when the change of government occurred and Labor lost and Abbott won, documents were found in Penny Wong's office that should have been destroyed but were not. And those documents were all security classified, top secret code word protected, which is the highest level of classification.
And they included things such as Middle East defense plans, Afghanistan war updates, intelligence on our neighbours.
Yep.
And details of counter-terrorism operations. Now,
profiles of terror suspects. Holy crap! Yeah. I don't even know where to go with that. Yeah.
Senator Wong, absolutely. When Labor was in government, Senator Wong had every right to have these documents. Okay, That's something that needs to be pointed out. She should have knowledge of what's in these documents.
Of course, she was.
The issue is that when she moved office, those files should have been destroyed.
Yep.
Instead, they were just left in a cabinet in the office.
Yep. Now, just to clarify, these are not the documents that have been obtained by the ABC.
No,
this is just information about... the documents obtained by the ABC contained a report to the Abbott government afterwards saying that this security breach had occurred. Yeah.
And this is a breach that no one was told about. This never made the media.
Well, would you release this to the media if you were in government?
I don't know. I really think that Abbott government, there's a good chance that they would have gone straight to the media to use to discredit Miss Wong.
But they didn't.
I know, and that's very surprising to me.
Well,
because they were
putting national security first.
Well, that doesn't
above
surprise
cheap
me.
Politics.
That doesn't surprise me, but they were very much using a lot of cheap politics at the time.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Look,
and you didn't have to.
Yeah.
You didn't have to compromise national security in just that it doesn't compromise national security by saying, yes, well, Miss Wong breached it here, and this is what she did. That in itself doesn't compromise national security. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now.
Sorry, since I read this a couple of hours ago, they've linked to the list of documents that were left in the office. One of which is the bilateral planning with the United Arab Emirates on the defence of the UAE in the event of an Iranian hostilities.
You were kidding.
No. Strategic plan for dealing with China. Political engagement with local power brokers in Afghanistan. This is crazy. And now, thankfully, these files were found by security staff after the office was vacated, who oversaw their destruction. So, thankfully, someone like that found them and not some random cleaner that could have sold them off to a foreign power or something like that. It's just...
Theoretically, these files would have had such a ridiculously high payday for. If these were for sale, that we are talking about tens of millions of dollars.
How much would Iran have paid for that sort of stuff? Knowing that the UAE is a Western ally, the possibility is in there that our plans with the UAE would have involved or detailed some of the United States plans with the UAE.
They most likely would have.
Or Britain, or, another nuclear power or something like that. So, wow. Crazy.
It is absolutely mind-blowing. That this happened.
Yeah.
It's like this is literally this is a leak within a leak. It's screw-upception.
Yeah, it's a screw-up within a screw-up. And this says something about the Abbott government who investigated this. They were notified of it in October of 13, and a review was done through the Department of Finance. They investigated the security breach. Department of Finance would have done that review, in my opinion, probably because they were... Senator Wong was the Minister for Finance at the time, so she didn't know about this until the ABC contacted her today, that it had even happened. So I think that says something for the Abbott government.
I don't know what that says, though. I mean, like, on one hand, that was probably a nicety to not contact the media about it.
Yep.
On the other hand, that was it's politically a very nasty thing to do to Miss Wong, is to not let her know that it happened.
I don't know.
I mean,
how does that come back to hurt her? Except in this situation, or in 20 years' time when the cabinet documents are released. But how does it hurt her not knowing? Is there actually... Sorry, I just thought of this. Is there a requirement in the Secrets Act? I mean, this is all confidential information. Is even talking about it a breach of the Secret Act?
That's a very good question. I think it doesn't hurt her not knowing about this.
Mm.
However, I think that's a professional courtesy that you extend.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
That's good sportsmanship, so to speak.
Mm. You know, that is so nice to see in politics. Even if it's something as serious as this, that is really good to see in Australian politics.
Agreed.
Sportsmanship, Just, yeah. I wonder if there's more of that than we get in our partisan media environment nowadays.
I absolutely believe that there is.
When I worked as a staffer, we had conversations with other staffers of different parties. You'd sit in the public bar, and the staffers would all talk, and you wouldn't give away state secrets or anything like that, but just talk and be friendly and stuff, and you make friends across the aisle, as they would say in the States. So, I met some people on the left of politics that I thought were quite genuinely decent guys. I'm not saying I knew them well or anything like that, but people like Kim Beazley, he was really nice, really genuine sort of guy when I met him. I only met him once. shook his hand, was introduced to him, shook his hand. Actually said something about good to see, young people in politics and taking an interest in politics. And even though it wasn't his side of politics. So that was probably 98, something like that. So 99. Anyway.
So I've always thought that man was the best Prime Minister this country never had.
Yeah, second best. I think Peter Costello's the best Prime Minister we never had.
Well,
throwing that bait out there.
But we're not going to get into that right now.
No, let's not get into that.
But I mean, if it's not knowledge to people, it should be common knowledge that a lot of politicians, even on opposite sides, manage to be friendly with each other and manage to actually enjoy each other's company.
Yeah,
and that's in a way that we're not seeing in the general public these days.
Absolutely. Do you remember when Abbott was rolled by Turnbull? Politicians in the House give a speech and make themselves feel special or something. The leader of the opposition, Bill Shorten, got up and gave this speech about Abbott. And he could have taken a good opportunity because they'd been, pretty vile to each other over the over the counter. But he said something interesting. He said, "No matter how much I vehemently disagree with Tony Abbott and his policies, and I think some of them are just awful policies and stuff. You get other times like where he found out one of my kids was sick and just sent me a message saying, hope they get better soon, thinking of you if there's anything I can do." And he's like, you can go from absolutely despising someone to thinking, it's so annoying. I actually have to like him for that because he's a decent person.
But I mean, that's the thing people having trouble forgetting these days, I find, is that you can disagree with someone and still like them as a person. You can be friends with people that you don't agree with politically. Absolutely. And personally, I put so much blame for that. And this is something that we mentioned in our first episode, if you remember, is I was saying I think that the biggest threat to this country is a divisive media. It's the media we've got right now. That's our biggest national threat because it's turning citizen against citizen. It's turning Australian against Australian. And we're not coming together with people because we don't want to form an alliance for one thing with the people that we hate for the other thing.
Yeah.
Hence why we see on social media, we see everyone calling each other fascists, libtard.
Two phrases I despise: libtard and snowflake. They just boil my blood when I see them because I'm just like, nothing you have said now matters. Nothing you have said is important or worth my time if you are throwing out words like that. It's like when people mock people's names, you'd get like Howard would have the war highlighted, sort of Howard and stuff like that. I'm like, that's not smart, that's not intelligent, that's dumb.
That's schoolyard.
That's schoolyard rubbish,
You're out of high school now. You should have grown out of that.
They do it to the other side. The right do it to the left just as much. I can't think of a relevant example, but, I've seen them out there.
Yes. Let's get back to these cabinet files.
Oh.
There are some more. There is another mini leak inside the leak.
Yep.
So we've got our major leak, which is the cabinet files. We've got our first mini leak, which is the cabinet files discussing Penny Wong's leak, or the leak from her office, we should say, because it obviously wasn't her. She didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
It was one of her staffers. It was whoever was in charge of the move.
Actually, we should just clarify here. We're using the word leak here for ease of use. But the truth is, these are not leaked documents in the sense that somebody supplied them to the ABC as a leak. Someone stole them, they're a whistleblower, etc.
No, this is just security
massive. This is actually a massive case of incompetence. It's not a leak.
Absolute. Okay, so we've got the cabinet files incompetence is the major one. We've got the Penny Wong staffer, her office incompetence with the international one. Then we've got another one which is described in the cabinet files where the Australian Federal Police lost nearly 400 national security files over the course of 5 years.
Isn't that exciting? Do we know when they were from? The files that are missing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. 08 to 13, so the Labor government. Yeah.
08 to 13. And the total number is 332 cabinet documents missing and 375 cabinet minutes missing. But there are a bunch of other things, there's not really too much more to say about that incompetent breach. There's a couple of other really interesting things that I found. The Andrew Bolt being consulted on changes to the Racial Discrimination Act.
Yeah.
I thought was interesting. And this was after Andrew Bolt was ruled by the federal court that he had breached the act. But it was very interesting that he was the only person who was specifically named as being consulted. And the draft cabinet submission in itself states, all points of view were canvassed, including those of ethnic community groups, Indigenous leaders, leaders of the Jewish community, Mr. Andrew Bolt himself, and backbench members of the government, end quote. And that another part of this submission also shows that they considered extending discrimination protection on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and intersex status, but did decide against extending those discrimination protections.
I wonder why.
That's the one that really, really does surprise me.
I wonder if they didn't want to mix the two issues up. Confuse the issues. Because they are sort of different. I mean, it is changes to the same act, but they are separate things, I think.
I don't believe that they are separate. I believe that bigotry is bigotry. However, the difference there is that when it comes to sexual orientation and gender identity and intersex statuses, you then have to start taking into consideration to an extent. Only to a certain extent, you have to take into consideration people's religious views. And because at the moment there's no religious view out there that in any major religion that's taken seriously, there's no out there that says black people or Asian people or Arab people or whatever are lesser races.
Yeah, that's true.
There's nothing out there that says somebody's race makes them less. However, there are religious views out there that say being gay is a sin.
Yeah.
By extension, being transgender and being intersex and all that. So that
I swear every 2 or 3 years they change all these words. You just learn them and then they change them.
Yeah, well, that does happen when words are constantly used derogatorily.
Sorry, that was just an aside.
Yes, that was just an aside. Yeah. But in the end, I find it very interesting that the cabinet decided against extending discrimination protection in this matter, especially seeing how much discrimination protection for homosexual people has been in the zeitgeist over the last year, particularly with the marriage discussions.
Yeah. Well, this precedes a lot of that, though.
Yes.
Because this is the beginning of the Abbott government.
But at that time, there was a lot of outcry about it. Because Abbott himself had made a lot of comments in the past that were perceived as, and I'm not going to say whether rightfully or not rightfully, but they were perceived by a large segment of the community as anti-homosexual and anti-transgender. And you saw a lot of this even in his attackings of things such as safe school programs and education.
Well, safe schools, and education are mutually exclusive things.
But they were two things that he was attacking. Anyway,
well, he should attack safe schools. It's an absolutely horrendous program.
I am not 100%. I'm not going to say that I'm 100% familiar with the entire content of the Safe Schools program. However, I do believe there are a lot of things that should be taken that it does right. I think there are a lot of things that it should be doing, that it is doing.
I think that what they say that it is doing is fine, as in promoting equality and peace and harmony and whatever. But what it actually does is actually a different thing than what they sell it as. And that's the issue that I have with it, and that's the issue that Tony Abbott had with it. So, and as much as it pains me to actually agree with Tony Abbott, he is right on that one.
Anyway, this is another aside.
We have a lot of asides tonight, but
absolutely, and we need to jump back on track.
So much.
I know it does. It does. This is a veritable gold mine for podcasters like us. This is like
weeks worth of episodes.
My first thought when you gave me this link was, wow, what the hell, wow. My second thought was, and we've got something to talk about. This is brilliant, because I was only discussing just last night as of recording this. I was discussing with one of our listeners. Shout out to Trent Halloran, who I play basketball with. He is a fantastic, intelligent young man. And I was just discussing it.
Are you saying that because he listens to our podcast?
Well, I'm saying that because he was a fantastic, intelligent young man before we even started this podcast.
Okay.
But
nice save.
Listening to us absolutely adds to that.
Well, as it should.
As it should. But discussing. But this was something I was discussing with Trent last night. He was saying, so what really is going on in politics at the moment? And I said to him, nothing. It's January. It's a dead month. Politically speaking, we don't see much happening in Januaries. And all of a sudden, just at the end of January, as a content producer, this just fell into our laps.
Yeah.
And
it's great.
Like, wow! We've just gotten some juice.
You know, we said it right at the start of the episode half an hour or so ago. This is mind-blowing. It is still mind-blowing to me, even pulling it apart like we are. Some of it is just massively, holy crap, I can't believe that stuff happened, like the, Senator Wong stuff. But some of it is like, this would have been interesting to talk about in 20 years when the cabinet documents are released. Like the 18C thing we just talked about with Bolt.
Yes.
And, things like the Razor Gang considered welfare cuts for under 30s. So that was the Abbott government, that 2014 horrendous budget that never actually passed. When they had all that stuff to pull back welfare payments and that sort of thing, that they considered cutting off everybody under 30 from welfare.
Absolutely.
From the dole, basically. And it's like, and look,
and for everyone who's not aware of who the Razor Gang is, that is generally considered to be Tony Abbott, the then Treasurer Joe Hockey, and the Finance Minister Matthias Cormann.
I love his accent. I love his accent. He reminds me of Arnold. He should be Defence Minister. Someone who sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger should be Defence Minister. Anyway.
Oh, boy. Anyway, basically, what happened with this is there were a number of options proposed at the time to ban anyone under 30 from accessing income support. And this was just before the This was while they were discussing how they were going to do the 2014 budget that, as you said, didn't pass. Now, and in saying that, cutting off under-30s entirely was only one of the options. Another of the options discussed was cutting off under-30s but only in areas with employment opportunities, however you're going to define that.
Having worked in employment, that is so dangerous. I'm glad they ditched that idea.
Absolutely.
Employment opportunities. What does that actually mean?
Exactly. That is the sort of broad, unidentifiable term that basically allows them to be as selective as they want.
Exactly, yeah.
And to be as completely arbitrary as they want. And then another one of the options that they discussed was limiting income support to only young people with a work history. So saying that if you want to get on the dole or AustrAlien or whatever, you can only get that if you've had what they deem a decent work history in the past.
Yeah. You'd have to have some tight guidelines with what is work history. Have I worked for one day? Is that then a work history? Do I have to have been employed for 6 months continually? That's a tough one to think.
Yeah. What if somebody had worked for 12 months, but for 3 different employers?
That's right. Well, I suppose that's history, but yeah.
But, and what if that doesn't reach whatever milestone they had of you've got to have worked for 6, 9, 12 months for one particular employer?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, not to be completely honest, I have spent a fair amount of time in between jobs on the dole at one point in my life.
Yeah.
Where I could not gain work. There was not work in town.
Yep.
That I was physically able to do.
Mate, you are preaching.
And that is somebody without a disability.
Mate, I completely understand. I mean, my training and my experience has been in office administration, and when I was living in Brisbane, I could work in office administration, doing administration, paperwork and things like that. I worked for a superannuation company in their back office and that sort of thing. You come to Rockhampton, where we both live, and office administration means receptionist, means 17 or 18-year-old girl who's left school. And I don't mean to sound sexist there, but that's the truth of it.
Yeah.
So I'm not a receptionist, and I'm certainly not an 18-year-old good-looking girl. Very difficult for me to then find work in those fields, so I had to change to something else, which was employment services, which I had worked in Brizzy as well. But that's my issue with a thing like employment opportunities. I am not a person who is physically capable of going out and digging trenches or mowing lawns for a living. I'm not built for it. No, I don't care if that makes me sound like a pussy or weak, non-guy type stereotype or whatever. It is the truth, and I'm not the only person out there like that. I used to see it all the time. So,
absolutely,
I could probably physically work in a bar or something like that, but there's no bar work in Rockhampton for a full-time career as a general rule. And again, Rocky, they want to employ young girls that are at uni or studying or a bit of work outside. And, fair enough, good on them. But that's not me. But it was something you said earlier to me before we were broadcasting. What do you think of the fact that they actually did canvass all these options?
I knew you were going to bring this up because I didn't think you were going to bring this up for this particular topic, though. But this was something I was saying is like, as a constituent, as a voter, as a taxpayer, I want my politicians to go through every opportunity, to go through every potential option that is given as a potential solution to whatever issue that they're discussing. And I want them to go over it all. Even if it's things that I and they are against, I want them to consider everything rationally. If you, for those people who are familiar with the 6 hats of thinking, I want them to go over every single potential option with the white hat and a black hat. I want them to know the pros and cons of every single potential solution to a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want my politicians to be intelligent enough to be able to go through that and see the good things and the bad sides out of every... And I want them to be able to make a decision and say, do the cons outweigh the pros? Do the pros outweigh the cons? How important is each particular pro and con?
Yep. That's what they're there for. That's what they should be doing.
And this is where I'm very surprised that you mentioned this topic and this train of thought that we're going on with this part of the Cabinet Files, because I thought that this was very linked to another issue that was revealed, where just very briefly, for those people who are unaware, behind the scenes in politics, there is a certain, I guess you'd call it, rule of sportsmanship, that you don't dig into the minutes of a previous government's cabinet, because it's in the minutes of the previous government's cabinet that you discuss and weigh the pros and cons of everything.
Yep.
But it turns out that Tony Abbott and Peter Credlin as well were warned by Secretary of the Prime Minister of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, Ian Watt, amongst others, that they should not be digging into and gaining access to the previous Labor government's cabinet meetings, which they did. And it was basically considered now that it's come out, it's being considered, that's a bit of bad sportsmanship, we kind of don't do that because that's just where people are discussing their private thoughts and opinions on the matter, not their opinions as their positions.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And, it's a professional courtesy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now because of it, we're seeing that there's a lot of things where on both sides of the fence that people have discussed things that go against what their public statements on the record have been.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is where this is where I tell you how glad I am that our politicians are discussing and at least considering all the merits and demerits of every single issue and every single potential solution to an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I said. That's what they should be doing. So and you know what? Tony Abbott's going to cop stick for that. The Abbott government will cop stick because they looked at that stuff. In
saying that, they didn't break any actual laws or rules in doing that.
No.
They didn't do anything they weren't legally allowed to do. And however, it's just considered a pretty dirty move.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same.
It wasn't great. Yeah.
For those of us who watch sport, it's the same as the guy who runs up the score at the end of the game, just to pad his stats a little bit, You're already winning by 30. Why would you go and keep dunking, Or the guy that does the unnecessarily flashy dunk on the fast break in order to ridicule someone.
Yeah.
I use the basketball terms because that's what I've been watching today.
Oh, that's cool, mate.
That's
you watch some sport. That's great. I watched Trump's State of the Union.
I am holding off on watching that.
I'd be very interested to hear your opinions on it. To be honest,
I find it very hard to get through any time that Trump speaks publicly.
Oh, dude, I sat there on YouTube and I waited until it was over so I could watch a replay of it, and I stuck it onto 1.5 speed. Bam, much better.
It's no secret I have a very intense dislike of the man, and I think he's doing his country very wrong.
Oh, mate, it's no secret that most of the world has a very dislike for the man. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get back to the last few issues.
Mate, we are veering around the topics a bit today.
Yes, we are.
It's great.
But that's my job. That's my job as host, is to keep us going back to the path that we should be on. Anyway,
we've hit Abbott. Let's hit NBN.
Let's hit the NBN.
Very interesting that the then Labor government, when they were proposing the NBN, were basically trying to get Telstra to take ownership of it, with completely doing what the government wanted.
Basically, they wanted Telstra to pay for it,
yeah,
but then to be done under the government's say-so.
Yes, exactly. So all of this stuff has been released, that their internal documents, which reveal Labor's plans for how to deal with Telstra. And so this is really interesting stuff if you like the NBN stuff, and I reckon the Coalition will use a bit of this. One of the things is Telstra will initially approach the government with a number of proposals, which the government will need to politely but firmly resist. The strategy is for Telstra to ultimately approach government to invest or use NBN Co's network on the government's terms.
To me, this is the least interesting one, because it's just people spitballing about, okay, well, how do we want to deal with this?
Yeah.
What is our desired outcome? How are we going to get our desired outcome?
Yeah. How are we going to raise the money?
Yeah. This, to me, honestly, this is nothing more than, me saying to myself, okay, this is the minimum I'm going to accept when I'm going to book a new gig at a new venue.
Yeah.
This is non-issue to me, to be completely honest.
Cool.
It's
interesting. These are documents which would be interesting to read in 20 years' time, as they're supposed to come out in 20 years' time. And we go, oh, that's interesting. That's how they were planning on doing it, but, it didn't work out that way. So
I'd be much more interested in these documents if these documents were the LNP's ones for the NBN that we eventually got.
I don't think we need to see those documents. I think the LNP have been pretty upfront of how they wanted to butcher it. So
that is very true, and butcher it they did, because there is a lot of hoo-ha going on about it right now.
I feel bad a bit for the LNP on this one, on the NBN as a general rule, because I think they were given the poison chalice of poison chalices. This is basically as far as Labor had gotten, was a thought bubble. Let's build an NBN. Let's do it. Probably cost about $50 billion. That's pretty much all the planning they did. I mean, the initial plans are written on the back of a serviette in the government jet during the election campaign in 2007. So, 2007. Wow. 10 years we've been talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
11 years we've been talking about the NBN. It's still not flaming finished. You know what's interesting about this is that I reckon the biggest travesty of this whole thing of the NBN is that it stopped the second the government said they're entering the space. They're going to go and enter the ISP space and build this gold-plated network, or this bronze network, might be a better way of putting it for the liberal version, or whatever, either side of government. As soon as all of them said, we're going to build a national network, any innovation stopped at that moment from any of the companies. Think about the 5 years or even 10 years prior to 2007 when this NBN was announced. We went from dial-up to ADSL1 to ADSL2, and ADSL2 they were pumping. It started off at 1 meg a second, and it was they'd refined the technology by the time NBN started rolling out to getting around the 6 to 8 megasecond down the line. So,
but
it's
in saying
innovation.
that, even
There's
at
none
that point
now.
in time, even at that point in time, though, everybody was already saying this is the limit. This is the limit of what our current infrastructure can handle. We were still. Look, and no amount of innovation is going to get past the fact that we were still on copper cables, and copper degrades signal. Something vicious.
Look, absolutely, but I mean the point is as well. It not just innovation though. It stopped investment because look at Westnet in Perth. They were laying fibre optic around Perth, so that stopped, and NBN bought it.
Well, because at that point, when you know something really big's coming and someone else is going to foot the bill, you let the other person foot the bill.
I think that's the unspoken thing about the NBN. I think we are stuck in the dark ages with internet now, more because of the theory that the government is going to build this beautiful network than the reality of what that network is.
I see where you're coming from. And to an extent, I do believe that your argument has a lot of merit.
I think we can stop
there. Yeah. I do believe, though, that it's a half and half situation.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it's an incontrovertible fact that the NBN that the LNP decided to build, that the Abbott government decided to build and committed us to, was a turd of a thing. It was nowhere near what we should have been aiming for as a country.
See, this is where I disagree.
It's incredibly short-sighted.
This is where I disagree, though. Not the short-sighted comment, but the rest of it. It's still better than what we had. People don't compare it to what we had. When people complain about the NBN, they compare it to what Labor proposed, which we don't even know if it would have worked.
I'm not comparing it to what Labor proposed, and most people, honestly, in that comparison, when they do compare it to what Labor proposed, they're saying, look, even this was better than what we got. But the truth is, most people at the time, and even still now, are saying we should have been looking at what they've got overseas. Even the NBN still ranks 50-something in the world as far as internet speed goes.
Oh, mate, I'm not justifying the speeds of the system. I think it's rubbish for what I pay. But
either way, both the Labor and LNP propositions were both based on outdated technology, right?
I think the whole thing's crap,
technology
yes.
that would be outdated by the time it is rolled out.
Absolutely,
supposedly by the end of 2017.
It's a white elephant before it's finished.
Exactly.
I can't even get my mind around this fibre to the node thing. Because it's stupid. Makes no sense at all. It just adds more places to get for mistakes to happen. For errors to happen in the network. The more connections you've got in a signal, the more problems there are going to be. But anyway, I really genuinely think that people compare it. Most of the arguments that I ever hear about the NBN are comparing it to the RUD gold standard version to what Turnbull ended up crapping out. So
I honestly believe that's just more of a, see, even this was better. And that was terrible. You know? I think it's them saying, look, the Labor version was bad, but even it's better, it was even better than what we ended up getting. You know? I think that's more put, yes, it's compared against it, but more compared against it out of exasperation.
It's compared to a myth. The reality is the LNP have actually built the network.
Yeah.
Whereas Labor never did. Labor had these great ideas, and they are great ideas. I actually don't think the fibre network, fibre to the home, nationwide would have been bad. I don't think that would have probably been outdated because That's basically what Korea and all those places use. But I just think a nationalised system is rubbish. Nationalised never works in this country. And I honestly think it's just pie in the sky. And that's the reason I feel bad for the LNP. Where I don't feel bad for the LNP and I'd like to kick them in the nuts for is because it is not good. So, and regardless of what they say and how they spin it, and we're connecting this many premises and blah, 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 it doesn't matter if my speed in this house that I'm sitting in recording this tonight is only marginally better than what I was getting on ADSL. Because my ADSL I was getting about 9 meg, and on this I'm getting roughly 10 or 12 at night. During the day when nobody else in the neighbourhood's on, I might get 20, 25. And I pay for 100, mind you.
Wow.
So, and I pay for 100 specifically so that I get the unlimited download because I have Netflix and, Stan and all that sort of stuff. So,
this is what I find interesting with it, and to me this speaks a lot about how bad the system is, because you're getting that. I am on a 100 meg download as well.
Yep.
When I was on ADSL, I was getting a 2 meg download.
Yep.
That was my connection. I was getting a 2 megabit connection.
Mm-hmm.
I pay for a 100 megabit connection and I get 87.5 megabit connection.
Where's the node? Right out the front of your house?
45 meters away.
Okay,
it's 2 doors down.
2 doors down. So that's the difference.
Yes.
And that's why node is crap. That is why fibre to the node is crap, because my node is down near the Dempsey Street fish and chip shop, and I'm 4 streets away. I'm probably over a kilometre away from my node.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rubbish. So all those houses in front of me are getting a better speed than me because I happen to be at the end of the line. And I am at the end of the line. It doesn't go much further than me because there's only 2 houses further and then the street runs out because it backs onto the national park. So it's a crap system. If anybody in the LNP is listening to this, you've built a crap system, do something better. I don't care whose fault it is. I don't care that it's Labor's fault that they designed a crappy system, because I agree with you. They didn't design a crappy system. They designed a system that was never going to be built. The Libs have built a system. It's just crap. But it is better than the ADSL. I'll give them that.
Okay, well, we've gotten off topic yet again, as we like to do, and I swear every time we do this, we should each be putting $5 into a jar. But getting back to the cabinet files again. Getting back to it, it's like herding sheep.
Is that a great name? Is that a great name from the ABC as well for this? The cabinet files. I love it.
Absolutely, it's a brilliant name. It's very catchy, very memorable. But another issue that came up was under the Howard government. And I know a lot of what we've spoken about has been, under Labor governments, but here's one under an LNP government.
Yes.
Under the Howard government, it was proposed that the right to remain silent potentially could be removed. And now, I will say, we've been talking up the ABC's journalism on this. I really think that's a misleading headline here. The actual headline that the ABC's used is "Right to Remain Silent nearly removed under Howard," and I think that's a very misleading headline. So I would like, that's probably my one issue I have with the way that the ABC has handled this. And when that's your only issue, then that means they've done very well.
Exactly.
However, under Howard's National Security Committee, there was a proposal by Philip Ruddock to give serious consideration to removing the individual's unfettered right to remain silent when questioned by police when dealing with terrorism suspects. Now, at the time, we had an Australian citizen, Dr. Mohammed Hanif, who was accused of providing assistance in the 2007 Glasgow terror attack. But, and later on, it was proven that the allegations were incorrect.
Yep.
And, Dr. Hanif was awarded a fair amount of money by the Australian government for everything he went through.
Yeah.
Because he was accused and proven innocent. But at the time, the then Attorney General Philip Ruddock was pushing for a range of new offences while he was under investigation, but also one of the proposals that he brought to the table was to modify the right to remain silent during terror investigation.
I think this is another case of what we were just talking about before we got off onto the NBN, that, it's good. They canvassed these opinions. This was something supported by the AFP and ASIO, but the senior ministers pretty much rejected it. So I think I think that's democracy and cabinet at work.
I also think it's, very much a good thing that we rejected it.
Oh yeah, hell yeah, absolutely.
That needs to be absolutely stated outright. Once we start eroding people's rights, you end up with Guantanamo Bay situations.
Yeah.
Where people don't get due process and people don't get justice.
Mm.
And that's not only guilty people but innocent people as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I cannot remember who said it, but there is a brilliant quote about the Western legal system. And he says, "It is far better that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man should be punished for a crime that he did not commit."
Yeah.
And that is the basis of the Western justice system. It is why we have innocent till proven guilty. It is why we shame vigilantes, and it is why that the court of public opinion needs to be reined in, and why we do attempt to rein it in.
Yeah.
It is also why we have you do the crime, you've done the time, but once you've done the time, you are a free man.
Yeah, exactly. That was Thomas Huxley, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I was desperately trying to rake my mind for who it was, because it had only just come across my desk again the other day, and I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things I like to ruminate when I'm in the shower.
Yep.
And I like to ruminate on things that are important. And that was one of the things I was having a good little think over while I was in the shower the other day after it came across my desk.
Yep.
So basically what they wanted to do was implement a new provision to allow adverse inferences to be drawn from failure to mention things while questioned.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
You can see why the AFP and ASIO would support that. Because you do draw things, just in normal conversation. If someone refuses point blank to answer something, you're like, what the hell are you hiding?
And in a lot of cases, people, as is human nature, tends to think the worst.
Yeah, exactly. So,
if I say, "Did you cheat on me?" and there's no answer, I'm automatically going to, that little voice that was a suspicion is now going to go, "Oh, well, that reinforces it a bit."
Yep.
I think it's also important to mention that, a spokeswoman for Mr. Howard, when contacted by the ABC about this, she did say that Mr. Howard didn't comment on the discussions, had no comment to make on those discussions in the NSC, but did point out that no such change to the law was made.
Yep.
And personally, to me, for all of the things that I dislike about Howard. I do believe that if his government brought this in, it would absolutely fly in the face of a lot of things that he stands for.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think
not a
this
liberal
speaks
principle.
this speaks more towards Philip Ruddock's point of view than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in saying it, it is very good that our government and our politicians were discussing all options and weighing them up.
Yep.
And weighing them for what they are. And that's, like I said before, that's a really good thing. That is super important because there potentially could have been things that were taken from that discussion that could have worked in another solution. And the last thing that we're going to get onto, because this is the last thing that has been released in what I am assuming is just the first batch of these cabinet files, is Scott Morrison. And this one, we may have different opinions on it. This one right here makes me very, very angry. I'm going to do my best to discuss it dispassionately, but I think it's important that listeners understand my bias. And look, at this point, if you've listened to a few of our episodes, you understand where I am politically, and you understand where Shawn is politically, and you understand what each of our particular biases are on various topics. But
have we talked about asylum seekers and immigration before, though?
I believe we've discussed it in passing. But we've never really gone into our own opinions of it.
Let's do it.
I think that's a conversation. Our personal opinions on this, I do believe, is a conversation that is best suited for its own topic.
Its own 3-part series.
However, now in saying this, I'm going to explain what happened, and I'd like to ask our listeners that whichever way you feel about asylum seekers, keep in mind that this is not discussing illegal asylum seekers. This is discussing the people that are the asylum seekers who have done what we have said. You know, because we as a country, we have made a big point over the last 10 years, 15 years of saying, if you want to come to our country, you'll come via our methods, the methods that we deem correct. This is how, if you're going to come to our country, this is how you're going to come to our country, via this particular process. And basically, what the cabinet files have revealed is that Scott Morrison, in late 2013, he was at the time he was our immigration minister. He was asking ASIO to purposefully delay security checks on a number of asylum seekers so that they would miss their due dates. And if their application was not processed in time, these asylum seekers wouldn't be granted permanent residence. They would only be granted a 3-year stay. So basically, he was gaming the system. He was attempting to game the system to stop people who had done the right thing. In this case, we're not talking about, and I hate this term, boat people. We're not talking about people who have overstayed their visa, people who have tried to be smuggled into the country or anything like that. We're not talking about people who came here illegally. We're talking about people who did the right thing, who played by the rules of the game that we as a country set, that his government set these rules. And this is what makes my blood boil. This makes me incredibly angry. Because my own biases aside, I think I personally believe that we should be allowing more asylum seekers into the country. And we should be processing them on our soil and processing them faster. But that is my particular bias. But this is, like I just said, this is a case of somebody doing the wrong thing, trying to game the system to make their numbers look better.
I don't think it's to make the numbers look better. I'll argue that point. I think the idea of it is to... the coalition had changed the policy from permanent to temporary protection visas. And it's a matter of trying to slow down the queue so that more people went onto the temporary protection visa. I don't think it's about numbers. I think it's about a not believing in the permanent visa program. And they changed that, but this was the holdover period between the old system and the new one starting. So the reason I have that thought is that he wrote to the department asking for a range of mitigation strategy, which this was one of. And he went ahead with this one. So that's why I think it's more about, I guess, trying to implement the new policy before it's officially implemented, if that makes sense.
Yes, I understand. Okay, I can understand somebody not believing in the previous solution, and believing that their solution is better and wanting more people to come through under their solution. I can understand that. As a human being, I understand that. However, you can't change the rules halfway through a tennis match. Australia, with a capital A, as an entity, entered into an agreement with these people, and in the end it would have worked out with about 30 people is who would have been affected by this.
Yeah.
30 asylum seekers.
Mm.
As a country, we entered into an arrangement with these people where we said to them, if you do this by these rules, this is your outcome.
Yep.
You can't turn around. Like, the new rules that changed were agreements that Australia as an entity then had with different people.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yep.
So we can't, I can choose to play two games of handball, one with you and one with a different person, right?
Yeah.
And if I decide that the game I'm playing with the next person, you can use saves. You can hit the ball twice as a save.
Yep.
For those who remember handball as a child.
Yeah.
But you and I have already agreed that we can't do that in the game that you and I are playing.
Yep.
Just because I've decided with the next person that saves are going to be legal doesn't mean I can start doing them in the middle of the game I'm playing with you.
Exactly right. No, you're absolutely right.
And that's what this is. That's really what this is. And when it comes down to it, this is 30 people's lives at stake. This is their livelihoods. This is their new chance that we've promised them the opportunity of. Because again, these aren't illegal immigrants or anything like that. These are people who chose to do the right thing. These are the people that we should have been making it. If you're anti-immigration, these are the people you should be holding up and saying, this is people doing it right.
Yeah.
So what does that say about an Australia that does the wrong thing by those people?
Well, you've changed my mind about something, TJ.
There's a first for everything.
There is a first for everything, and that's a first.
Can I get that when you're editing this later on, Shawn?
Yeah, yep.
Can you send that to me because I need a new ringtone?
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
I need a new ringtone, and that sounds like that'd be,
You've changed my mind, TJ. You've changed my mind. You're the best, TJ. You're the best. You're
with a little bit.
So right.
Dial back the sarcasm now, if you could.
Well, difficult.
Difficult, I know.
Look, I won't change my views about the actual policy, which was what I was really thinking about when we initially spoke about this. Because I do believe in temporary protection visas over permanent protection visas as a first visa, and then it moves on to the permanent later on if they've proved that they're willing to abide and live in Australia and follow our laws. But you're right. Your handball analogy swayed me, TJ, about the principle of it, of the change. Not about the actual content of the change, but the principle of it.
Fair. And that's only the bit that I was discussing. Like,
yep.
I did not want to get into a discussion or an argument here and now about visas or about asylum seekers or refugees.
Because it's an argument you would lose, so...
I don't believe it is. I believe it's an argument that we'd end up going, I disagree with you, and neither of us would sway the other.
Yeah, well, it is one of those arguments. That's true. That's very true. So, there you go. So that's the release of the cabinet documents as it stands at the moment. So far. And to be continued, I reckon. They haven't said it, but I think we both agree with that's a to be continued. So.
We're going to get more soon.
Oh, I hope so. Because this is great.
This is very juicy.
It's scary. It's funny. It's shockingly shocking. But it's also great.
There are potential repercussions from this, especially from that Kevin Rudd one and the Penny Wong one.
Yeah,
I think those two issues are the ones that are going to turn around and affect the future of Australian politics.
Absolutely.
And I think those two really are the two that are going to continue to be newsworthy stories.
Do you think Penny Wong much will happen with her, as with the senator herself, or?
I think she gets a slap on the wrist.
Mm.
But where she truly gets punished is real. For my money, she was absolutely on the short list of people who could potentially be the next leader of the Labor Party.
Mm.
I think, if Bill Shorten was to get kicked out of leadership, it really would have come down to either her or Anthony Albanese as the next leader. I think this is just... I won't say it's put a nail in the coffin of any leadership aspirations or chances she had, but she's now gone from having, say, 4-1 odds to having 50-1 odds.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
All right. Well, we should call that an episode with our lovely digressions and tangents that we go on. But I just want to thank everybody who listened. I think it's I'm really appreciative of everyone who listens, of everyone who sends us messages, who likes, who shares, who leaves comments. Just want to ask everybody, please go and leave a review on our iTunes page. This is how we this is how we get the word out. This is how we start to get any sort of momentum in building and growing our podcast.
Absolutely. Yep.
It is absolutely important to us so if you could do that, we would be ever so appreciative. Now that we've recently had some changes to our distribution methods, Shawn, would you like to?
Absolutely. iTunes is exactly the same as it's always been. If you're subscribed to us through iTunes, that's fantastic. You will keep getting the episodes. Just be aware that some of the older episodes have gone missing and will be re-uploaded as time goes on. The only other thing is that we now have a YouTube channel, so our episodes will be on YouTube and you can hear us through YouTube.
No, we've now got a bit more control over it ourselves.
Yep.
And that's actually quite exciting to me. Even though I'm not handling the back end of it, that's Shawn there, and may I say he does a fantastic job.
Thanks, mate.
I'm very excited for what the future holds for us. This is
absolutely.
This is a nice jump and a nice step forward into the right direction for us, I believe.
Absolutely. So stay tuned. We're trying to get onto a few more distribution services just to make it so that you can find us and listen to our dulcet tones as easily as possible.
You particularly want. And so if you want to get a hold of us, you can find us on Facebook at the AustrAlien Podcast, spelled like aliens.
Yep.
Or you can hit us up on Twitter. We're at AustrAlien_pod. Please hit us up. Please talk to us. You know, we're two lonely men in our mid-30s.
Hey, I'm 40, mate. You might be in your mid-30s, but I'm 40. I'm middle-aged.
Anyway, please feel free to hit us up. Please talk to us. Tell us what you want to hear about. Tell us what's important to you.
Tell us what sucked.
Tell us
something.
tell us anything that you want to tell us.
Yep.
We'll leave you on that. I'm TJ Hollis.
I am Shawn Mills.
And thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you